Thank you for being here this morning. And I want to take a moment to welcome our folks online. Thank you for tuning in to us. And so let's just take a moment to close our outer eyes. Take a breath. And we'll recognize that there is only one life, one power, one infinite presence that is everywhere present. It is that life that not only creates, but allows everything to blossom and form and become. That infinite presence is pure love, and it radiates from within us outward. I know that each of us are unified together by that infinite presence, by that love. We are one in that love that has created us and all things seen and unseen. We are a part of that divine presence, and it is who we are. And in this moment, I speak my word to know that this morning is a morning of insight, uplift, inspiration, and joy. I know that Reverend David's message really speaks to our heart this day. And I know that our musicians, our wonderful musicians, are blessed by that perfect love and joy that they express through their music. And I speak my word for those on our technical team. I know that they are blessed. And I know that each one of us are making the perfect right choices. We've already made the choice to be here together this morning. And that choice becomes an experience. And so I know that our experience here is filled to overflowing with all things that are good and grand and perfect. I give thanks for this morning, for this center, for all of us. I give thanks for the infinite presence that speaks through each of us. And in that thanksgiving, I release my word into that creative aspect of the law that always says yes. So we can say yes by affirming together, and so it is. And now there will be a couple of minutes of silent reflection, and the musicians will bring us back.
Richard Rohr, in his today's meditation, mentions that life is a journey, and oftentimes it's 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. Anybody relate to that? Mm-hmm. But he also said something else about that, which I hid, and so let me pull that back up. He said, and the backward creates much of the knowledge and impetus for the forward. The backward creates much of the knowledge and the impetus for the forward. So our talk today is I agree to honor my choices. I agree to honor our choices. And in the book we start off, and for those who are new, we're doing a whole 3-month series on a book called Revolutionary Agreements, 12 agreements that are designed to be a personal path to peace on earth. And so that's what we're working with. So today is the 8th of the agreement. We're going to be 2/3 of the way through the book as of today. And they're divided up into 3 segments. The first segment is called Truth. The second segment, which we're in the middle of, is called Acceptance. And the third segment is Gratitude. And so we're starting next month, we're going to look at gratitude. But today, we're looking at agreeing to honor our choices. And it starts with a quote from Scout Cloud Lee, who says, when we acknowledge that all of life is sacred, can we acknowledge that all of life is sacred? All of life is sacred. Okay. And that each act is an act of choice and therefore sacred. Then life is a sacred dance lived consciously each moment. When we're in that mindset of seeing the sacredness of all life, the sacredness of all choice, we live in a conscious way that sees life as this sacred dance, this sacred process. It's only when we forget that, and when we think that life is not sacred, that we think that this is separate from this and all that, okay, that we start to lose focus on that. But if we see from, it's often said, see with God's eyes, see with the higher eyes, see with a higher perspective. All of it is sacred. And Marion Head, who's the author of the book, says, if we would live these three words, honor our choices, our lives would change dramatically. And I noticed that it isn't I honor my choices. And yours are really screwed up, man. It's I honor our choices, collectively, all of us. I honor our choices. We would free ourselves and others from years of blame, shame, and guilt brought about by judgmental hindsight. Now, hindsight's a wonderful tool for learning, yes? It's learning from our experiences, but it's not a wonderful tool for judging ourselves and others for choices made which at the time seemed to be the best, seemed to be in alignment with what we really wanted them to be. Come on. They were the best at the moment that we made them, or they seemed like the best at the moment we made them. And we may think we have made some bad decisions. Anybody besides me ever think that they may have made some bad decisions? Okay. We married the wrong person. We took the wrong job. We did the wrong things as a parent. One of the places where a certain group of people experience a lot of blame and upset and anger is from the Seattle Seahawks football game of 10 years ago, the Super Bowl. The very last play of the game, I believe it was, where they were inches away from scoring the touchdown that would have won the Super Bowl for them. And everybody said, just hand the ball to Marshawn Lynch and he'll run it in. And they threw a pass, which got intercepted. And some people are still. Now the thing is, nobody's activated at the moment here, I know, but you know people out there, right? The thing is that if that play had worked, it would have been genius. Because everybody's expecting Marshawn Lynch to run it, and they were going to defend that. It's just a simple toss. Somebody else made a really great play against it. And it's a wonderful learning experience for things that we do that seem at the time to be the best decisions possible, and then we find out later on some dang defensive guy gets in the way and intercepts our quote, pass, right? But if we could go back and live in that moment again, wherever we made those decisions, with every circumstance and experience leading up to it, would we see ourselves intentionally choosing something that would hurt us? Or would we think that and see ourselves choosing a path that we thought at the time, that we felt at the time, that we believed at the time was the best decision based on everything we knew and were feeling in the moment? See, spending years of blame or regret serves nobody, including us. If you're carrying around any of that, dump it. It's not serving you. It's not serving anybody else. I had the wonderful experience of, several of you who have been around for a while have heard me talk about my second marriage, my second ex-wife, right? And it ended rather badly, and especially when I first got here in the first few years, I went on about that a bit. I might not have been fully released of that yet. Early this year, we were doing an intentions retreat, and one of the people there has been a friend of mine for 25 years and reminded me of the beauty of that marriage at the start and all the good that we did together. And there was this little part of me that was wanting to be right about what a blankety blank that ex-wife was sitting there going, shut up, Maggie. But really it was, thank you for the reminder, Maggie. It isn't black and white. It was a good decision at the time. And I'm grateful because I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that decision. So we have to look at that. We have to realize we made the decision based on everything we knew at the moment, and it was the best we could make at the time. So hanging on to blame and shame and all that stuff cuts us off from any real learning from that experience. We all have moments that we will look back on and wonder if we should have made a different choice, taken a different option. Yes? You know, out here there's these trees, and if you look at some of these, the tall evergreen trees that are up there, they have these branches that go out a little ways and a little ways, and they stop. And they're stunts. They're mistakes. You know, they're things that the tree didn't quite get right. And the tree could either be sitting there going, oh my God, I'm a failure as a tree. I look at all these branches that never went anywhere. Or the tree can focus on the fact that there's a crown, a magnificent crown at the top, taking in the sunlight and all the nutrition that it needs, right? We all have little branches along our way that we've walked down and said, eventually, that's not the way. Either we've said it or we've helped, other people have helped us to see it, yes? We've been moved somewhere else. My second year of college, during the summer after my second year of college, my second grade teacher's, who was still friends with my mom, husband was a vice president at Janssen Swimwear, headquartered in Portland. And I was offered a job as what they called a pattern grader. And I was doing technical illustration class. And so a pattern grader was, every piece of clothing is designed for a certain size. And then you have to scale it up or down for the size of the person who's going to wear it, yes? And so, the designer designs it in maybe size 8 or whatever like that. And these days, computers do that wonderfully for us, right? In those days, it was people drawing them out a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, each step up. And so I could get a job as that. And they offered me the job. This was the summer of 1971. My hair was down to here. And they said, if you cut your hair, you can have the job. I said, if you offer me the job, I'll cut my hair. Remember the times? For those of you who remember, some of you don't, but you've read about them. David Crosby is sitting out there going, I'm going to let my freak flag fly, and all that. And so, that's where we stood for 2 weeks. We sort of stood at an impasse with each other. If you cut your hair, we'll give you a job. If you give me a job, I'll cut my hair. And they finally moved on. And I went back to college. A year later, got hired by Life and Casualty. Each decision leads us onto a particular path. And we learn and grow from each decision and path. Now, there's times in my life that I've wondered, what would have happened? What would my life have been like if I said yes to that? If I got off my self-righteousness and cut my hair, what would have happened? What potentials would have opened up? The thing is that a year later, as I mentioned, I got hired by Life and Casualty. And over time, I met the person who would eventually get me into religious science, as well as personal growth seminars. I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't taken that path. I don't know if I would be here today if I had taken the Janssen Swimwear path. We don't know these things, right? And so we learn and we grow from each decision and path, and we would not be here who we are today without all of those choices and results. See, having gained wisdom, we can look back and we can judge our decisions as bad or stupid. Anybody do that, play that game ever? Yeah, I think we all have at some point in time. But we only gained that perspective by having made those decisions and experiencing the results thereof. She says Marian Head says that the greatest choice we have now is how we feel about our present circumstances. The greatest choice we have now is how am I going to be today? Am I going to carry all that baggage with me? Or am I going to let it go and be present? Am I going to, as the song invited us to, release and let go? Another aspect of that is there are no mistakes. we think that she made a mistake. Said that she made a mistake during that little one of the songs there. There are no mistakes. Yes? Yes? Now, there are ways that we would rather have it gone, but guess what? There's no mistakes. Ernest Holmes said, recognizing that all of life is one, said, there are no mistakes, none have ever been made, and none ever will be made. Take that in for a moment. If there's only one life, only one oneness, one wholeness, we can't make a mistake. There are no mistakes. A mistake is our assessment of a situation. But we don't know the fullness of that situation. We see we're so conditioned to get right answers, yes? Most of us grew up in a school where we were supposed to get the right answers, and we were supposed to find right solutions to the problems. And that good girl and good boy in us is afraid that we'll make mistakes. And so oftentimes we live our lives afraid to make a mistake. She gives an example in the book of a couple of companies that get excited when their people make mistakes. Reward them for making mistakes. There's a guy she references in there, I can't remember his name right off, Jason Burke or Jack Burke or something like that, James Burke I think it is, that talks about how he had made a mistake. He worked for Johnson & Johnson company, and he made a mistake. He got called into the CEO's office, and he said, I expected to be fired. And said the CEO says, are you the guy who made that, did this and cost us all that money? And he's like, yeah, that was me. He says, good going. Keep on taking risks. And when that CEO retired, that guy got hired as the CEO of Johnson & Johnson and was there for quite a few years and brought them to some greater success than they'd been. So we all make mistakes. And yet history shows us the greatest inventions, the greatest expansions, the greatest experiences in life have oftentimes been so-called mistakes or imperfections. Yes? We all know probably we all know the story of whiteout, which was a mistake. The story of the Post-it notes, which was a mistake. Right? The story of rubber itself was a mistake. Vulcanized rubber. When I was living in Connecticut, I had a friend who wanted to buy me a sake set. She knew that I liked sake. She knew that I liked Asian things. And so she went down to New York City, and she considered herself a very cultured person. She went down to a lovely gift shop in New York City to buy me a sake set. And she was looking at this one particular set that had caught her eye. And she goes, well, it's really nice, but there's these little imperfections in it here. And the shop owner took the sake bottle out of her hand and said, this one is hand-painted. Let me show you the machine-made ones. And she said she turned about 3 shades of red, and I still have that sake set to this day, right? Oftentimes it's the slubs, the flubs, the mistakes, the quirks that make something beautiful and unique. And by the way, nudge your neighbor and say, you are beautiful and unique with all your slubs and flubs and so-called mistakes. We are each works of art. We are each works of art. When we believe in the only one right way approach to life, anything that doesn't match that way is wrong, right? And yet history and our own lives are full of so many examples of expansion as a result of our not doing things the right way. As we understand that the infinite intelligence is all there is, we start to realize that nothing is a mistake. There's 2 fabulous jazz musicians that had a couple of things to say about them. One is a guy named Miles Davis. You might have heard of him, considered the greatest jazz trumpeter of all time. And he said, it's not the note you play that's the wrong note. It's the note you play afterwards that makes it right or wrong. When I make a mistake, what do I do next? And then Thelonious Monk, another jazz great, said, there is no wrong note. It has to do with how you resolve it. Both of them are saying if we get stuck in, I've done it wrong, then we're stuck there. And that's what we sort of wrap it in that little blanket, and there it is. If we start to say, how can I work forward with this? It shifts. And life is more like jazz than it is like classical music. Sorry for any of you classical music fans. Where in classical music, you're supposed to play all the right notes at the right time in the right way. Jazz is much more of a flow. Living in the past, beating ourselves up or beating somebody else up doesn't bring us to greater peace or greater joy. In the books, Marion talks about a speaker who she heard that said, unless you know a person's complete... excuse me. I broke a tooth yesterday and it just came out. I now have a hole. I made a mistake. I bit into a pastry. And we all know I'm not supposed to be eating pastry, so that's God punishing me for it now. It's been sitting there kind of wobbling around for the last 24 hours, so... Sorry about that. So I'm going to... It's like jazz, yes. Thank you, I know I am. The speaker said, unless you know a person's complete history, all that he has experienced in the past, and all that is intended for him in the future, there is no way you can judge him for what he does today. Unless you know a person's history, all that they have experienced in the past, all that is intended for them in the future, there is no way we can judge a person for what they do today. Do we know each other's future? Do we know our own future? Are we absolutely certain that it's going to be just this way? Each choice we make is a point in an ongoing, forever unfolding stream of choices. Each choice influencing and interacting with every other choice to create a whole life. I don't know the final outcome of my life. You don't know yours. You don't know the final outcome of anybody else's life. It helps to realize that every person, every one of us, makes choices they believe will bring them happiness. Now, from our perspective, perhaps gained from experience, we may see better choices than the ones they're making. Have we noticed that ever? Okay. Look around the country right now. We can see some better choices than some of the ones that are being made. But we have a different set of experiences. We can see better choices that weren't visible at the previous moment. And if we have the perspective that everything is perfect, even if we don't see how right now. See, oftentimes we think that I know what's perfect, I know what's right, et cetera, et cetera. We might not. In fact, I'm going to tell you, none of us really do know what's right in the longest run. We can't see where we're going. If we live with that openness, we'll tend to flow through life with compassionate curiosity and with openness rather than blame, shame, and guilt and being closed. And sometimes this takes a little thing called, anybody know? Forgiveness. Love too, yes. But forgiveness. Forgiveness of others, forgiveness of ourselves, to release anger and resentment, which only poison who? Myself. And so finally, I want to speak to the fact that we are seeing an attempt in our country to deny certain aspects of our history. Yet the United States, as all countries are, is made up of all the choices we've made throughout history. The ones we're proud of and the ones we're not. If we're going to accept that life is a 3 steps forward, 2 steps backwards, and a learning experience from those backwards, so that we can grow, then our way has to be to let go of having to be right every single moment or trying to cover it over. Our fourth agreement was to examine what's working and what's not and to adjust accordingly. If we can't clearly see with compassion what is and isn't working, we won't be able to adjust, to learn, to evolve. Whether we do this on an individual basis, my own life, or whether we do this on a national or worldwide basis, it's still important that we recognize our choices and their circumstances, which can spur us to make better choices. But the choices we have made need to be faced, recognized, and acknowledged if we are to grow into to be more free and more at peace, which is ultimately what we all want. Yes. So this week, 3 practices. The first one is if you're haunted by a bad decision, notice it. Just admit, yeah, this still bugs me, okay? It's okay. Sometimes we get all spiritual, right? Oh, I'm supposed to be over that. I'm so over that. I'm so over that. Why am I still so angry? Right? Or hurt or scared or whatever. So just notice if you have a bad decision, notice it, revisit your thoughts and feelings and circumstances at the time you made this decision, and notice what outcome you hoped it would create. See, we all do things to create the outcome of greater happiness, yes? Okay? And then ask, is this an outcome I would still like even if I now know better ways? Right? That's the first one. The second one is celebrate every mistake, learning experience that you make today. Celebrate it. I remember the Dalai Lama being in an argument with one of his aides, and all of a sudden he stops and he goes, I made a mistake. I made a mistake. It was sort of like, wow, even I, the Dalai Lama, can make a mistake, right? And it was a celebration. So celebrate it. Consciously reframing each one as a fortunate learning experience. Susan, that's a new one from you. I know you have the AFOGs. This is an FLE, a fortunate learning experience. And then the third one is apply this to others. Ooh. Are you willing to play with this spiritual practice this week? Yes. Thank you. I'm going to close with a quote from Marian Head, from the author of the book. She says, as we release our judgments and accept that we make the best possible choices we are capable of in the moment, we contribute to a revolution of genuinely epic proportion. Honoring our choices engenders greater peace in our minds and hearts, which in turn contributes to peace on earth. If you want to contribute to peace on earth, begin at home. We have an affirmation. Say it with me. I agree to honor our choices. I agree to honor our choices. And so it is. Thank you. We have a... Thank you. We've been celebrating African American history all month long, and we have the third in a series of 4 videos we're going to see celebrating African American history, black evolutionaries in New Thought. And so we'll take a look at that video for a moment.
Here's a little-known Black history science of mind fact. Some of you might know that Founders Church of Religious Science opened in Los Angeles in 1960. But do you know it was designed by a Black man? Ernest Holmes asked Paul Revere Williams, the first African-American admitted to the American Institute of Architects, to sketch an idea for the building in 1957. Williams produced a sketch of an elliptical circle, and Holmes liked what he saw. To Holmes, the sketch was the perfect symbol for wholeness, unity, the unending and all-inclusive power of love. Williams designed many landmark buildings in Los Angeles, including the iconic LAX Airport Terminal. He was later named a Fellow by the American Institute of Architects, a high honor for his outstanding achievements. Another science of mind Black history fact also involves Los Angeles and a famous singer.
This God didn't make little green apples, and it don't rain in Indianapolis in the summertime.
You might recognize this song and this deep, sultry singing voice.
There's no such thing as Dr. Seuss, no Disneyland. Mother Goose is no nursery rhyme.
1969's best song, Grammy Award winner for Little Green Apples, celebrated vocalist O.C. Smith.
And when myself is feeling low, I think about a face aglow and ease my mind.
The talented Smith experienced several career highs that only the best musical dreams are made of. But even though Little Green Apples hit number 2 on the Billboard charts and sold more than 1 million records, the former vocalist for phenomenal band leader Count Basie knew deep down there was something more. Smith told an interviewer, "After the music success I had, I was still searching for something and didn't know what it was. I kept looking outside of myself, not realizing the reaching is in the soul, not outside." His life gained new purpose in 1980 when he and his wife Robbie Golson discovered Science of Mind. Introduced by Dr. Joseph Murphy of Laguna Beach, Smith finally heard what he had believed for so long: God as a metaphysical entity, one with all, belonging in each of us and uniting us if we wish to see the Almighty. Inspired by the powerful spiritual principles he internalized, Smith even started explaining the metaphysical meanings of songs during his concerts. Profoundly struck by Science of Mind, Smith gave up his music career to study divinity, and in 1985, Dr. O.C. Smith became pastor of the City of Angels Science of Mind Center in Los Angeles.
We must recognize beauty right where we are. That's why Dr. Ernest Holmes said, "There is not a spot where God is not."
He gained a reputation for mixing jazz with storytelling and for being a loving force of financial support to single-parent households, low-income families, and foster children. The church's City of Angels Foundation also provided dozens of scholarships to help students attend colleges across the nation. Dr. O.C. Smith and Paul Revere Williams, Black evolutionaries in Science of Mind.